liked about this documentary was it was interview style, a collection of interviews with the community, and you see the community's passion in the film. Um, but what you also see is constant is the disbelief for where the hate comes from. And it does seem like everyone is giving their opinion on finding the solution to this propagandized hatred that exists for people in this community and people of this religion. But there seems like a consistent lack of understanding of exactly how to do it. So everyone's giving sort of their feedback and their response on what they think is the best way to deal with this propagandized hate and what's the best way to prevent this from happening. But the thing about hate is what I'm realizing is to stop someone from hating you for you just being who you are, it's like an answerable question. As a person of color, there are people who hate me just because of what I look like. And yes, media has a play on it and, painting a picture for people who are less educated and giving them ideals that they can stand on about them being superior. All of that stuff definitely is a cause. Lack of information, ignorance, all of that is definitely a cause. But when hate exists in your heart, how do you stop someone from hating you for you just being who you are? This guy's doing his job, and these people hate him because he's just doing his job, because he represents something that they dislike, or he represents something that the media made them feel like they should dislike, um, or they just dwell on hate in general. So I do feel like this documentary is trying to really put the message out there about what hate can do and why we should be focused on stopping it.
I love the way it was shot. We didn't have a narration or someone explaining things to us. We simply had the perspective of the people, which I thought was really important to show everybody's perspectives and what they were feeling in the moment and then years and years later. So we had interviews from 1998 at the time of Nirmal Singh Gill's murder. And then we also had a perspectives from years later looking back and seeing that unfortunately we're still having very similar conversations about hate um, and discrimination and um, you know hate crimes, and that's really unfortunate. But we've also come far in other ways. Um, so I enjoyed hearing from all these different people in their interviews, and I was amazed at how well spoken everybody was at getting their points across and their perspectives. I also really appreciated the interview with the reformed white supremacist to see how far he had come in his journey, and how he has a very different perspective years later, from being, a white supremacist himself to condemning everything entirely. I thought was really important to see. And also the fact that this whole documentary took place in Canada. Um, you don't hear about racism as often from places other than America, and it's important to acknowledge that racism can happen anywhere, and it's a really big problem everywhere. And yeah, I thought that was really important to show as well.
That was a very impactful and sort of interestingly timely piece, given the past context of the events. I believe it was in Canada. A Sheik man, if hope I'm not incorrect there, was murdered by white supremacists, and it was a reflection of the outpouring of pain and the call for change at the time. I believe this was in the late 90s, and I thought it was quite interesting. So many of the narratives present in the piece were still reflected into today's society, and I thought that some of the interviews later on, excuse me, had a really interesting sort of philosophical examination of a lack of humanity within that particular culture and within, I think, human society in general, that was sort of encapsulated with this type of violence, this type of hatred. So I thought the piece was very careful and very respectful of the backdrop of the piece, while also being very intent as a call to action and an informative construct to show that this type of violence is unfortunately quite typical, especially within the context of this country.
It just makes my heart so sad that there's so much intolerance in the world. But I think that the filmmakers really, really did justice to this and did not let the murder of Nirmal Singh Gill, am I saying that correctly? I hope I'm saying it correctly. They're not letting that just go by the wayside. The interviews in this were, some of them were, it was so painful to listen to with what happened and having these hate crimes happen and the intolerance that there still is there today. I mean, it's a very controversial subject, but I think that the filmmakers did this justice. I think one of the most interesting things was listening to the ex-white supremacist speak, as well as the police chief, hopefully I don't say his name wrong, Baltag Dehillen. It was really interesting listening to Baltag's interview and everything that he was saying. I think that the filmmakers did a great job in finding footage from the late 90s to use with this, as well as really good cinematography that they did with these interviews today.
They give us very interesting footage from a rally that was protesting hate and violent acts a few decades ago. The murder of a person due to his appearance, mostly. It is based on ignorance and ridiculous views of supremacy and who belongs where and why and who decides that. They offer a captivating testimonial from a person that was able to let go of the hatred and dehumanizing others, a recovered white supremacist. I like the approach of explaining why it takes over, or that ideology took over his whole personality and some of the lives of some of the people he met through that network. In some instances, it can be deadly, definitely. Sensible and unfortunately still 100% relevant conversation. It was very engaging.
I really loved all of the interviews and the wide range of interviews that they had. And the footage that they had, and they did a really good job of compiling not just older footage, but also current, recent interviews that hate crimes and all of this kind of targeted hate, there's no other word for it, is not just an issue of the past. It's not just something that happened whenever, like way back when. It is a current problem. It is something that we still need to be talking about today. I think that this did such a great job of highlighting that and highlighting that hate still is an issue. Hate still is a problem. And it's, there's a difference between disliking somebody and randomly and having so much hatred that you are taking it a step farther. You're taking it to violence. You're taking it to targeted attacks purely for that person existing. And that is so extreme and so honestly unbelievable, but it's true. It happens. And that's why it's so important. That's why this film is so important. That's why the message is so important. And I really loved what they did. I really thought it served its purpose well.